Well, I'm glad to be here this evening. We were just in rural Missouri, the real thing, where there's a few cars and a few people down there. It's been a busy year already. Google tracks you and they send you this report every month telling you where have you been and so forth. It sent me the report yesterday that I have been already 1.6 times around the world just this year. So we've been publishing different studies. This one, we are preparing the manuscript to submit in a few weeks. We're going to be sending this one for publication. This is one of our patients that came to our program in California. This patient had problems with prostate, had problems with diabetes, had problems with high blood pressure, had problems with allergies, and he had problems with depression. So because of that, he was taking this bag of medication every day. And he came to our program, he learned the causes of his problem, he started making the right choices and changes, and in a few months, we were able to stop the majority of his medications. To the point that when we did the mathematics, he is actually saving $53,800 of medication he no longer needs. Is that good or bad? This is really good, isn't it? Because not only the cost of the medications, but also the problem with the side effects. You start taking one medication to stop the side effect of this one, and it starts getting really complex and complicated. And this one just came out in the scientific literature, this full paper, in which we were following our patients that come to our program. Our program is located in California. It's called the New Start program, in which we try to help people reverse their disease. It has been running, by the way, since 1978, one of the pioneer programs, a nonprofit organization. And we were following our patients for a whole year, those patients that came to us that had issues with hypertension. And what we are showing in this study is that 93% of the patients that have high blood pressure, by the end of the 18 days that last that program, either they had stopped their blood pressure medication or they had decreased it dramatically. 93%. I mean, pretty amazing, the number. This one also very interesting study. We were documenting how patients that have thyroid problems, some of them happen to have problems with their anxiety. And we're showing here that a community intervention, educating patients on healthy behaviors for 8 weeks, resulted in a very significant decrease in their levels of anxiety. You can see at the beginning 13, by the end 4.6 in their level of anxiety. Very impressive in a matter of 8 weeks. This one, we are showing in this program that we run in communities. More than 5,000 people have participated of this program. We're showing that half of those people that came to that program happen to have a background of growing up with an alcoholic in their home. And growing up with an alcoholic in the home, what we're also documenting here in this study, happens to increase your risk for mental health disorders later on in life. Many times, abuse and different things happen, emotional and so forth, in that type of setting. This other one, very, very interesting study, in which we were following up people that habitually listen to watch MTV, VH1 type of television shows. And what we're showing in this study is that people that habitually watch this type of programs happen to have double the risk of smoking. There's a few reasons why that could be explained. One of them is the role model type of thing. If the artist that is playing and singing, if he makes the cigarette look so cool, isn't it? What are the young people going to say? Man, I want to be like whom? I want to be like the singer. I want to do whatever he does, the way he dresses, what he does, I want to do it. So, that role model effect happened to have an effect at the smoking ratio. And this other one, very interesting study, we're finding a correlation between intake of folic acid or folate. You find this especially rich in leafy leaf vegetables. Okay? The type that has dark type of color. This is a very important nutrient, not only for your physical side of things, but also for your mental health. And we're showing here that increasing the intake of this nutrient, folate, in its natural form in the food, has a positive effect on a marker called emotional intelligence. And that emotional intelligence is your ability to get along with others. Have you seen people that cannot get along with others? It doesn't matter where they are, in their work, in the family, in a church setting, wherever they are, they throw sparks at others. See, those people have low emotional intelligence. And what we're showing here in this study is that emotional intelligence actually can be increased as you learn good behaviors. We'll be talking more about this particular subject tomorrow, so don't miss it. You can find that research that I'm showing you, and more than 100 of them here in this ResearchGate page. You can either type the whole thing, or in your Google, you can Google these three words: Francisco, which is my other name, Ramirez, and ResearchGate. It's free. None of those things. I'm trying to sell you, something, nothing. Everything is free. Also, there's a very active Twitter account if you want some motivation, on why you should do these changes and so forth. There's also a YouTube page, and if you want to come and travel with me around the world, you can follow me there on that Instagram, and you can experience and see what I am seeing around. So the question of tonight is there any hope for depression? And the reality is that we can classify the population into two groups. One group is those people that have some sort of mental health issue, depression, anxiety, and so forth. The second group in the population, you can classify them as those that know somebody that have one of these problems. In fact, if I were to ask, raise your hand if you know somebody with either depression or anxiety, most probably every single hand would raise up. Because these happen to be a very common problem in today's society. In fact, depression not only affects you mentally, but it also affects your pockets. In this study, what they were documenting is that you're going to be losing about $10,400 a year if you have an issue with depression. Why is that? Do you feel like working hard and so forth when you are depressed? No, isn't it? It affects the level of energy, it affects the concentration, and all these factors. In fact, Nature magazine, which happens to be one of the most important journals in the world, recently did a review study to see what is our understanding of the problem and what type of issues we are facing still. Notice what it says there in that article. It says there that you are more likely to be cured from cancer than from depression. Because not only depression is common, but depression happens to be very chronical type of problem. In other words, it's not just 1 week you have it, but it goes long time. In fact, they said, when we went and checked to see how well medication for depression is working, they found out that only half of the people taking the medication achieve full remission. 28% of them only achieve that. And how common is depression? Well, statistics say that among females, 1 out of 4 females will have major depression at some period in their life. Among males, the statistics are 1 out of 8 males will have depression in some period of their life. Why the incidence happen to be higher on females? There's various factors, but among an important one happened to be the hormonal aspect of things, the change of life, menopause, and so forth. So, how do we know if somebody has depression? Well, there is an international guideline. Doesn't matter where in the world you go, they will use this guideline to diagnose depression. And in that guideline, it's called the DSM-5. They say that if you have 5 out of 9 symptoms that we're going to see in a minute, for at least 2 weeks, that's the way we diagnose what is called major depression. So let's go and review quickly those 9 symptoms. First symptom, deep sadness. Did you know that males and females represent this symptom differently? Among males, the way they represent this symptom is they say, "Doctor, I don't know what happened to me, but I feel like there's this void or something is missing inside of me. I cannot put my finger where the problem is, but I know something is not right inside of me." Among females, they represent the symptom differently. They tell me in the consultation, "Doctor, I don't even know why, but I'm just crying spontaneously. I mean, a tiny little thing is making me cry. In fact, I shouldn't be even crying for that, but it's making me cry. I don't know what's happening to me." That's the way they usually represent this symptom. Next one, apathy, in which the person wakes up in the morning and it does not look forward to the day. In fact, what they tell me in the consultation is, "Doctor, I think that my problem is that I'm getting old. And I think that old people feel like that," they tell me. No, this is not the way that old people feel. This is not actually a normal symptom. Next one, agitation. The person loses its patience very easy. The patient can change mood rapidly, or it can qualify for that symptom if the person has what is called psychomotor retardation, which basically means the patient is either speaking or moving very slow. And in fact, most of the times, he or she doesn't even know it's doing that. The people around them can notice this, but the person itself cannot. So either one of those two will qualify for that third symptom. Next symptom, sleep changes. And you know the answer. Patient tells me, "Doctor, I wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning, and what happened to him or her? I cannot go back to sleep." Classic symptom of depression. Why is that? Why is that happening in that person? This is what is happening. When we have depression, there's a chemical in our brain that decreases That chemical happened to be called serotonin. And at night, the serotonin is converted into melatonin, the sleep hormone. So if there is little serotonin because of the depression, there's going to be little melatonin. And that's why the person has problems initiating sleep, has that issue that it awakens very early and cannot go back to sleep and so forth. The good news is that as we start making the changes we're going to be talking about today, the serotonin will increase, the sleep quality will also increase as a result of that. So, one issue is too little sleep, but also it can qualify for this symptom if the patient has what is called hypersomnia, which means they sleep a lot. This is the type of patient that comes to our program of depression in California. And these patients are sleeping 14, 16 hours a day. And you know what they tell us? They say, you know what, doctor? I feel like I should be sleeping even a little bit more. You know? Like 16 is not enough, you know. I mean, imagine sleeping 16 hours. You can barely function, isn't it? I mean, that's enough time to, you know, eat something, take a shower, and take care of a couple of things, and your day is over. You know, you need to go back to sleep, you know. It's a very, you know, dysfunctional type of schedule. Next one, appetite issue, in which the person either is gaining weight or losing weight. Why is this happening? Because, you know, even though the patient may not know about biochemistry or pharmacology, the patient is literally self-medicating with food. There are certain foods that help the patient feel better temporarily. Like what foods? Chocolate, sugar, white flour, caffeine. These types of things, when the person consumes this, temporarily they feel better. But that's the problem, that this only works temporarily. So they feel better, and then they crash again. And what do they need now? A second dosage. And they go through the day in this yo-yo. And what's happening? By the end of the day, all those calories end up being accumulated and the person starts gaining weight. Or the other side of the coin, in which the patient actually is not hungry. You know, they serve the dinner and the person sits down, takes 2-3 spoonfuls, and then he says, oh, I'm not hungry anymore. Thank you. I'm going to go back to my room. And, you know, this actually is even logical. What's the problem here? If you're not eating the right nutrients, your brain cannot make the right chemistry. And this type of patients, not even the medication for depression works on them. Because the building blocks to make the right neurochemistry are not present. We eat those things that are going to become the chemistry we have in our brains. Next one, lack of concentration. The patient has a hard time putting their head to what they're trying to do, either at work, either at school, and even simple things that other people may not have a hard time, such as taking decisions. Man, these people have a hard time taking simple decisions because the concentration is not there. Next one, feelings of worthlessness. The person feels that they don't have any type of value, that they're not important, or they get themselves in their head the wrong idea that even it would be better if they were not there. which is a really, really wrong idea. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow also. Next one, morbid thoughts. Morbid thoughts means the person has this inclination to think about death. They like to think about disease. They like to think about harming others or harming themselves. Any of those are called morbid thoughts. Now, these morbid thoughts, you can actually see a reflection of this if you start noticing around you. For example, a lot of young people, what type of designs they like in their shirts? All these skulls and stuff like that. See, that's morbid thoughts. That's not normal. You go to the art gallery here in Chicago. What type of paintings sometimes you see? All these dark and gloomy and, you know what I'm talking about? Type of paintings. See, that's morbid thoughts. It's a reflection. The artist had morbid thoughts, and that's why it communicated that on that canvas. And finally, the symptom of fatigue. The person says, "Doctor, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just got back from vacation, and I have this tiredness with me that just doesn't go away with anything." And it's very interesting. Many times the patient won't go and seek medical help for the other symptoms, but they will come for the fatigue. And as you start analyzing and you start asking the right questions, boom, the other symptoms are present, and the person had not realized that. In fact, it's interesting that many times the person is not, tries to hide this. For example, recently we had these two patients that came. The husband that was the one that was supposed to come and talk to us. He didn't want to, so the wife brought him, And he sit down, and then the wife was behind him. So then we were suspecting that it was an issue of depression, so we started asking the questions. Are you having problems with your sleep, sleeping too little, sleeping too much, early awakening, too much sleep? He would say, no. The wife would say, yes. We went to the next symptom. Have you noticed you're changing weight? Either you're gaining weight, losing weight, are you having changes in your appetite, eating too much, eating too little? No. The wife, yes. After 2 or 3 questions, we had to stop the interview and say, wait a minute. Somebody is telling us the truth, somebody is not. Who is who? And the wife immediately jumped in and said, no, yeah, he definitely has those problems. Look, the other day, boom, 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 he started giving really clear examples of how the husband did have the issue, but was trying to hide it or be in denial. And the thing of it is, you need to be honest, if you want to receive that help, so we can understand what are we dealing with. Now, if the person has 2 to 4 symptoms, remember the first one was 5, but if it's only 2 to 4 symptoms, that's what we call a minor depression or a subsyndromatic depression. Everything is not completely well, but everything is not completely bad. Somewhere in between, and that is impairing their ability to fully function and so forth. So, depression, the problem is that it starts to become symptoms in the body, such as headache, such as abdominal pain, such as problems with immunity, such as issues that used to be conquered in the past, like an addiction. The person starts again with that addictive behavior, and the person starts affecting not only at the level of the mental health, but even hormones, immunity, memory, and all kinds of problems start to manifest as a result that depression is having an effect. Now, there's a very wise quotation that says, the condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Many of the diseases from which men suffer are the result of what? Mental depression. Grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, distrust, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. And it's a reality. When things up here are not well, they start affecting the physical side of things. So, what about suicide? Well, suicidal thoughts, as they become more prevalent and so forth, this starts having a big effect on the behavior. And you know, I'm coming from California, and in California we have this beautiful, huge bridge called the Golden Gate. Anybody heard about the Golden Gate bridge? Well, that bridge is a beautiful bridge that is humongous. In fact, it's so big, the Golden Gate, that when they start painting that bridge, they have to, by the time they finish, they have to start painting it again because the paint is too old. That's how big that bridge is. And you know, as you go out of San Francisco, you cross that bridge, and that bridge is sadly a place where many people go to commit suicide. They don't have very good protection on the sides, so the person stops the car and jumps there. And I can tell you it's a long way down there. But believe it or not, a few people actually have survived the jump. So a very wise researcher went to find those people that survived the jump to try to understand what is somebody that is trying to commit suicide thinks. So he goes and finds the people and asks them very interesting questions. First question he asked, did you want to commit suicide, yes or no? What was the answer? Yes, I wanted to commit suicide. Follow-up question. Are you glad that you didn't finish your suicidal attempt? What was the answer? Yes, I am so glad that I was not able to finish my suicidal attempt. And then he asked a very interesting third question, the researcher. When did you change your opinion? That's a good question, isn't it? First they want it, and now they don't want it, you know. When was the change of opinion? You know what was the answer? As soon as my feet left solid ground, I realized I had made the worst mistake of my life. And the issue is that depression increases impulsivity. You know, the person many times end up saying things they regret. They get the credit card and go and buy all kinds of things, and not until the bill arrives, you know, they realize, hey, why did I bought all these things? I don't even needed all these things, you know, what's wrong with me? So in the same way, the person is jumping the gun. So watch out for symptoms of hopelessness. That is what's going to be the most related to suicidal attempt. Now, if you know somebody that tells you, you know, I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to do it like this, and I'm going to do it this, you need to call the suicidal hotline or 911, because there are many things that we can do for that type of people. As we said, impulsivity. Many times the person thinks, oh, I need to do it, and so forth. And it's just a temporary type of feeling. Is not necessarily something that they really are wanting to do it. So let me share with you one of our patients. Mikala was a very beautiful and intelligent girl. But sadly, when she was small, in her teen years, and a friend of the family sexually abused her. And depression started to creep in her life. And the way that she dealt with her depression? She started to establish boyfriend-girlfriend relationships that would become very fast, intimate, and then the boyfriend will dump her, and then she would start that cycle over and over again. Do you think that helped with her mental health problem? No, actually, it started to make it very much worse. To the point that by the time that she went to seek professional help, she was put on one medication, but it was not enough. They had to give her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 psychiatric medications in order to control her severe symptoms of depression. And even though she was so over-medicated, she was still very bright and intelligent. So very soon, she was able to get a job at the local pharmacy. And as soon as she started working in that pharmacy, she caught the eye of the manager of the pharmacy. And they started establishing a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Now, this one seemed different than the other ones. This one seemed a little bit more stable and better economically and so forth. So she thought, that she was in the top of the world when the boyfriend asked her to spend a long weekend down at one of the beautiful beaches down in Mexico. So they go and fly down there. The next morning, he puts on his shorts and goes for a swim. And she stays in the room, and he leaves his cell phone in the room. So she curiously goes to the cell phone and noticed that the cell phone didn't have a password or anything. And she goes to the area where the photos are. And to her shock, she realizes that he is going out with her co-workers at the same time that she is going out with her. And suddenly, from thinking that she is, on the top of the world, her whole world crashes. She grabs one of her bottles of pills of medications, and she takes the whole thing. Now, good thing the boyfriend found her very soon and was able to take her to the emergency department. They were able to clean her stomach. And by the time the evening came, she was ready to be sent back to the hotel. And as she gets back to the hotel and realizes that she is alone with him, she says, no, my life is over. And she takes another one of her bottles of pills and takes the whole thing. But this other one had very nasty side effects. It caused a severe drop in the blood pressure. So now it's not only, the intoxication of the medication, but the physicians now have to deal with the kidney failure and all kinds of things. Becomes a big nightmare for the physicians treating such case. When the boyfriend sees all the mess that he has caused, he says, oops, I need to go back to America, and leaves her down there in Mexico while he flies back to America. And in a minute, I'll tell you the rest of the story. So, what about the research for depression? As we talked about, depression happens to occur because there is a problem with the neurochemistry. Remember the low serotonin? In fact, every single medication on the market trying to help depression is trying to target this space, where one neuron connects to the other neuron. That's where the medication is trying to target. And you can see that depression, if you make an imaging study, depression happens to have the side effect of low activity of the brain. See, this is the brain of somebody that is depressed, and this is the same person when it recovers. Notice the nice, rich red color there on the top of the frontal lobe. Compare that to this. So, physiologically speaking, depression triggers a hypoactivity of the brain. Now, there's a researcher by the name of Ramirez, and he asked the question, what causes what? Does the depression cause the hypoactivity, or do the hypoactivity trigger the depression? The conclusion of this researcher is that actually the hypoactivity is actually triggering the depression. Now, is there something that can be done for depression? Here is the heart of what I want to tell you tonight. This is one of my studies, and in this study, we were documenting the causes of depression. See, if you can put your finger at the cause of the problem, you can do something about it, yes or no? See, because the 9 symptoms that we saw a minute ago, remember the losing of the weight and the fatigue and the concentration, they are too nebulous. We don't know exactly what may be causing those things. So the way that we wrote this scientific article is that we went to the check what other studies have been published about the subject, about causes of depression, and you know what do we found? We found more than 100 different causes of depression published in those scientific articles. So what we did in this article, we took those 100 plus causes and we grouped them in 10 groups. So it is our hypothesis that somebody will end up developing depression if they have 4 or more out of the list of 10 that I'll show you in a minute. This article, you can find it for free on that ResearchGate. Remember that I told you about it? ResearchGate, Francisco, like San Francisco, Francisco Ramirez. That will take you to my page, and you can find this article and download it for free and read it if you have an interest. So this is what we call the 10-hit hypothesis. Briefly, we have the genetic factor. Genetic factor, you will have this problem if you have somebody in your family that had depression or has depression, or somebody close in the family that committed suicide. They may have some genetic issue. Second one, developmental. The way you grew up. Having had, traumatic events in your childhood, very severe poverty, an alcoholic or a drug user in your home, having suffered abuse, and all these things when you were a child end up marking your life and increases the risk for issues later on. And here is the good news, bad news. Bad news, these things are in the past. So you cannot, get on a time machine and go back, and try to fix these things. These things are done. But that's the bad news. But the good news is we said you need how many? 4 or more to develop the depression. It means you can have these 2. That doesn't mean you need to be destined to be depressed for the rest of your life, because you need 2 or more. As they combine, that's when you end up with the depression. So let's see what can we do. Next one, lifestyle. Not having a regular exercise program, not exposing yourselves to bright light year-round. By the way, if you are here in Chicago in the winter, what happens? It gets nice and dark. So if you happen to be somebody that is prone to depression, I would highly advise you to buy what is called a blue light and expose yourself to that blue light early in the day, every day in those winter months. that will increase that serotonin that will help you feel much better. Or the third one for lifestyle happens to be fresh air. If you are not breathing fresh air on a regular basis, you're too much inside the buildings and not going out enough, that can be one of those. So any of those three will give you that lifestyle hit. Can you make changes in those three things? Yes or no? Yes, Even in the winter, you can go out and do some exercise. See, I used to live in Norway. I actually speak Norwegian because of that. And in Norway, they have a saying that says, there's not such thing as bad weather, there's bad clothes. So the same thing applies here in Chicago. I know it gets nice and cold here, but you just, wear the right type of clothing and you can go out and do some exercise. Next one, circadian rhythm. You qualify for circadian rhythm if you don't have a regular schedule, if you have disorder in your life. Not going to bed at the same time, not waking up at the same time. That's not good for your mental health. Not having regular meal times. You need to be eating your meal times at the same time the whole day. And if you have insomnia on a regular basis, any of those would qualify for the circadian rhythm. Can you improve these things? Absolutely. There's many things you can do to improve the sleep and so forth. Next one, addiction. You qualify for addiction if you are using, of course, any type of illegal substances, cocaine and opioids and so forth. But also some legal ones, such as benzodiazepines, especially the short ones, Xanax and this type of medications, opioids for pain, or it will qualify for this also, smoking, usage of alcohol on a regular basis, or the caffeine, any of those things would qualify for addictions. Next one, nutrition. As I mentioned to you, this one is a logical one. If you are not eating the right nutrients, your brain cannot make the right chemistry. You will qualify for nutrition hit if you're eating too much junk food, if you're eating too many animal products, if you're eating too much sugar, too much white flour, or if you're not eating certain essential nutrients, such as omega-3s, such as tryptophan, good amount of iron, good folate, and so forth. These nutrients are essential for your mental health. Can you change your diet? Yes or no? Yes, you can make changes to your diet, improving that hit also. Toxic hit. You qualify as toxic hit certain elements that happen to have an affinity to your nervous system affecting your mental health, such as lead, such as cadmium. People that work with batteries expose themselves to cadmium. And the most common one happens to be mercury. Any of those three exposure to these things will have a negative mental health. Next one is three things in one. Number one, what we call the social aspect, not being part of a social type of group that meets on a regular basis. Such as a club, a church, somewhere that you on a regular basis meet the same people and have that nice support. Any of that will qualify for the social hit. Next one, having this type of chronic stress in your life. It's a difficult type of situation in the work that you're just constantly under stress. Sometimes the marriage is not going very well, and that stress day in and day out, or any other source of stress in a chronic fashion would qualify for that. And finally, the grief. Grief when you lose something that was very important and precious to you, a very dear person or relative, a job, or even at the level of the physical. if you are getting older and you're feeling, that you're losing your physical abilities, things like this, any of those things would qualify for that grief. So any of those three would trigger that 8 hit. And then we have 9, which is actually the exception of the rule. It would qualify for that 9 hit if you have any medical condition that happens to have a negative effect on the mental health. So this one by itself can trigger depression. Like what type of things? Thyroid problems or hormone problems, liver problems, kidney problems, autoimmune problems, cancer problems, a diabetes that is not good under control. Any of these things by themselves can trigger depression. You need to solve that problem. You need to put it under good medical care. Then the depression will improve. And finally, the frontal lobe of the brain. Remember the graphic that I showed you, the activity of the brain? One of the areas of the brain that you get the least activity when you have depression happens to be the frontal lobe of the brain. These are the ones that are located in the very front of your head. And 2 groups of things would have an issue there. Number 1, if you're doing things that go against the function of your frontal lobe, that will trigger this hit. Like what? Well, for example, your conscience is on your frontal lobes of the brain. So doing things that go against your conscience, that would qualify for that. And or you are not doing enough things to stimulate your frontal lobe. So either or would qualify for that frontal lobe hit. So as you can see, that is the heart of our program. In fact, our therapy is focused on that. And what I do, I document in the scientific literature these things. For example, this one showing how people that are exposing themselves to lead are at higher risk for depression. Or this one, how having stroke happens to increase the risk of depression. Why is that? Because it can affect the frontal lobe, and we said things that affect the frontal lobe increase the risk of depression. Or this one, how certain exposure to toxins through certain types of foods from the seafood actually are high in certain toxins, and that can have a negative effect on your mental health. And also, we have the statistics showing how this program works beautifully. For example, these are our statistics regarding people that have suicidal thoughts. You can see that many of them don't have suicidal thoughts. 68% at the beginning of an 8-week community intervention don't have the suicidal thoughts. But 1/4 of them do have them. And half of them, which should be 9%, and 9% have them half of the time, and 6% have them all the time. So you can see in the before and after, keep your eyes here on the non-suicidal thought. Notice what happens by the end of the 8 weeks. Tremendous improvement regarding suicidal thoughts. Is that good or bad? Good, because as the person feels better, the suicidal thoughts improve. Notice this one about the causes of depression. Notice how number 1 happens to be, which one? Circadian rhythm. Number 2 didn't come out here, but number 2 is lifestyle. And you can see here how in our community program, the 8-week program, lifestyle, circadian, genetic, you cannot do anything, we said that. But you can see frontal lobe, social, nutritional. Can you do things for those? Absolutely. You can make those changes, and that will improve the mental health. In our program that is residential, we have two programs. One, the community version, educational, and the medical program in which you come to us, and for 10 days, we're going to change your lifestyle, identify those causes of depression, and reverse them. Notice what happens when you do that in a matter of 10 days. You have these patients that have severe type of depression. I mean, they're in the top of the chart. You know, you cannot be more depressed than that. Notice what happened in a matter of 10 days, how the depression improves so dramatical to the non-depression. What did they do? Well, they dealt with the causes of the depression. As you deal with those causes of the depression, not only the depression improves, but also the anxiety is also going to improve as a result of making those lifestyle choices. So you can see here the statistics. This is the 8-week educational program. You can see that some of these participants, 27% of them don't have depression, but 15% of them have it mild, 34% moderate, 23% severe. Notice what happened. Keep your eyes here on the blue one, on the 27. At the end of the 8 weeks, notice the tremendous improvement. What did they do? They started dealing with the root causes of the problem. Then the mental health starts to improve. The same story happens with anxiety. Keep your eyes on the 34. That's the non-anxiety. By the end of the 8 weeks, tremendous improvement as the person starts to improve the mental health, their ability to control their emotions and so forth. Tomorrow we'll be talking a little bit more about this anxiety, so don't miss it. So what ended up happening with Mikala? Remember the girl that we left her in Mexico? So an aunt of her had mercy on her, and she flew from Tennessee to be with her in Cancun, Mexico. And she knew about our 10-day depression residential program. So she brings her to us, and she didn't want it to be there. She was very severely depressed. She still had some suicidal thoughts. And she had to be motivated to start getting on with the program. You know, in the program, what are we going to do? We're going to do the things that we were showing you in a minute ago. We're going to put them to do exercise. We're going to do light therapy, music therapy, a lot of exercise, changing their diets, therapy for their thoughts, and all these things, you know, in a combined fashion. And you know, when she started doing those lifestyle changes, in a matter of a few weeks, the smile of Mikala returned again. In fact, she told us that she had not felt so good in years. That now, as she started dealing with the root causes of the problem, she saw how her depression was being conquered. In fact, today, Mikala doesn't take a single psychiatric medication. Remember, she used to take 5 of them. And she actually is a very successful person. Not only her mental health improved, her emotional intelligence, her ability to interact and get along with others also improved. And she has, you know, now those tools to give her success in her future life. In fact, today she even volunteers running this 8-week community program, teaching others how there is definitely hope for depression. So as you can see, depression is a big problem. Depression can be conquered, and there is many things we can do for depression. Now, you may not be able to do all of them, but as you start doing some of them, they start having an impact on not only your mental health, but your physical health. So I hope you have a good night, and tell your neighbor, to come tomorrow and take advantage. I'm not here every day. In April, things are going to get like super busy, April, I need to go to Ethiopia again, and I need to go to Nairobi, and I need to go to Athens, and I need to go to Malaysia, I need to go to Australia, and I need to go to Italy. So yeah, we'll see how that coronavirus is behaving. That's going to determine a little bit which way I can go and I cannot go. But anyhow, I don't know, we'll have a couple of questions, or yeah. Okay. There's one here. We said to turn it on. Yeah.
Couple of questions for you, Doc.
Sure.
First of all, how many doctors are at your facility, and how many total healthcare workers? And second, what is the cost of your 8-week program?
Good question. Regarding our program in California, this is not a continuously running program. Okay, so it happens to run just 5 or 6 times in the whole year. Dealing with this severely type of depressed people is not an easy thing. You have to motivate them and all these things. It's very draining to work with this type of severely depressed people. So the program runs a few times. We have a couple of physicians that are helping there with that program, but it's not only the physician. There's a whole team of specialists that help with the different issues. We have cognitive behavioral therapy, we have specialists in music therapy, we have specialists that deal with the anger and these type of things that the person may be facing. We need to have exercise physiologists, we need to have nutritionists. It's a whole team that is involved with that. And because, number one, is in California, and 2, because is you have all these specialists helping, that program is actually not very cheap program. I can give you a number, 580-226-8007. Again, 580-226-8007. If you're interested about that 10-day program, go ahead and call there. Now, if I were to come to the community and teach you all the changes you need to do in just one program, it's too many changes. You cannot do them. I can guarantee you. So what we have done, we have broken down that 10-day program into small pieces, and we have created that 8-week program in which people come once a week. They learn a couple of those principles. They have 1 week to practice. They come back again. They learn a few more. And in that way, they're able to absorb all those changes in a matter of those 8 weeks. That program, the 8-week program, actually is a non-for-profit program. You do pay some materials you need to get so you can, follow along the program and so forth. But depending on the setting and the materials used and so forth, it costs about $300 and something, which is phenomenal. If you consider how much it costs one medication for depression for a whole year, it is cheaper than paying that than participating for this type of 8-week community program. I don't know if you guys are running it here, not. But maybe in the near future, you can run it here in the community. So many people around the world run this program, and it's an educational program, the 8-week program. It's not a medical program. So if you have the desire to help others, you can actually get trained to learn how to run this program in community settings. Yeah?
I guess it's not so much a question as more as a statement. I know that you guys also have the Nedley Depression Anxiety DVD set.
That's
'Cause
correct.
I do own that set.
Okay.
And I did go, I think this was back in, it was probably the summer of 17 to the 10-day program.
Okay.
And it was phenomenal.
That's
So,
right.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's
But,
amazing what you see there. In that program, the 10-day program in California, the response rate is 95%. 95% of the people that participate of that program, they will get better. What about the 5% that doesn't get better? Those are what I call the disobedient patients. We're telling them, do the exercise, go to bed early, and all these behaviors. They don't want to do that. You think it's going to work? You need to do your part also. We do our best, and you do your part. That's the way that it works really well. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
Anybody else?
As far as increasing frontal lobe activity,
Yes.
what are some of the things that can be done for that?
Good. What we focus on is the improvement of what is called abstract thinking. Abstract thinking, that ability that we have as humans to see something that is not here. For example, a programmer, the one that makes the apps on your cell phone, he or she had to use abstract thinking. That person saw that program in their head. When they press here, it's going to bring this data from the database, and it's going to put this graphic, and it's going to move this and all this. In their head, they were seeing that before it was so. Now, if you're a computer programmer, you're using abstract thinking on a regular basis. But many people are not programmers on a regular basis. So what are they going to do, to stimulate their abstract thinking? Well, interpreting proverbs actually is an activity of the frontal lobe. In fact, it's very interesting. If you ask a little kid, in their 10, 12s, you give them a proverb and you tell them, what does it mean? They will have a hard time telling you. Something that we as adults, can figure out much easier because the frontal lobe takes years to develop. In fact, in males, it develops until you're about 28, 29 years. Females, it takes until you are 25 to fully develop those frontal lobes. So, one exercise that we like to give to people that want to exercise their frontal lobe on a regular basis is to read Proverbs. Now, in the old days, people used to use more Proverbs and so forth. Where are you going to find Proverbs today? Well, find any Bible, and there's a book of Proverbs there. It happens to have 31 chapters. And how many days has the month? 31. So you read the chapter of the day so you don't get loose. Even if you're a non-believer, I can tell you, you're not going to learn bad things there. And as you read that, don't read it like fast. Read one verse, think about it. Read another one, think about it. What does it mean? See, doing that is like getting weights and lifting, is good stimulation for your frontal lobe. One third thing you can possibly do, higher mathematics also. If you're doing things like calculus and high algebra and geometry and these type of things, that's abstract thinking also. You're not seeing it here, it's in your head as you imagine the graphic and so forth. Again, most people don't have this type of job. They're not physicists and mathematicians and so forth, but they can do the exercise with the Proverbs to stimulate that frontal lobe.
Okay, going back to talking about like the 10-day program, I just wanted to know, how can you make it sustainable so that when a participant or a patient ends up going back to their home and where they deal with the stressors, to continue and be able to just continue this process? And then have you done a follow-up study on adherence to this and if there have been relapses back to depression after like a year or 5 years after this?
That's a very good question. So one of the ways that we are working on improving that adherence to the program is the following. We now try to keep in touch with those patients. And we are calling them, asking them, how are you doing? We run a little test there to see how are things going. If they're falling through the cracks or something, then we actually develop an extended type of a program that the person can participate, and in that way can keep motivating. And also we are working currently on making an app in which the person is able to receive, videos and encouragement, and in that way so they can keep as part of the loop. And another thing that we try to encourage our patients as they finish the program is to plug in to other groups that have good, healthy behaviors, because, there is an influence that happens that others have on us. So if I hang around, healthy-minded people and so forth, they're going to have a positive effect on me. So that's the way that we try to encourage them. Have we done a study on that? That's exactly what I'm working on. Possibly by the end of the summer, we're going to have a full-length paper that we are working on. As we're calling all these patients, and they're giving us permission, of course, to use their data, the ones that give us their permission. We are tabulating and seeing, what's happening at the 20-week mark, what's happening in the 6th month, what's happening in a year, and so forth. So in order to project and understand the situation. We're gathering the data and so forth at the moment, so I don't have a fully answer, but something I do know, relationship problems tend to be problematic. If the person is in a very troublesome type of relationship, and when they come to our program, they get better, and then they go back to a very, turbulent type of relationship, and that relationship the issue is not solved, that subgroup doesn't do very good. The relationship, will send them back again to depression and so forth, unless, it's dealt with in counseling or resolved or something. So, yeah, that's the reality of the situation.
Nutrition is one of the big list items on your list.
That's right.
So if someone is, even a little bit or a lot going through depression or those kind of things, then it's that much harder to go out of your way to prepare the kind of,
that's right.
nutrients and
That's
food.
right.
So what are some resources, whether, website or apps that are helpful that you know of that for people to make it easier to, make those right choices?
That's right.
Food?
There's a good plan that you can subscribe for free. If you Google the following words, 21 days and PCRM. P as in Peter, R as in Rome, PCRM. So 21 days, PCRM. Google that, and that should take you to a page. It's actually available in English and Spanish. You sign up for free. They'll give you the recipes, and there's even motivational videos and things that you can follow, so you can start making those changes at home. In that way, it's free.
As a follow-up question to what he asked you, do you have a couple, there's thousands of foods, but are there a couple foods that you recommend that are better, A, for depression, and B, for the frontal lobe?
Yes, we want to focus on a very important amino acid by the name of tryptophan. You know, we have proteins, and then proteins are subdivided in amino acids. Tryptophan is what becomes the serotonin in your brain. It's the building block. So we want to eat tryptophan-rich foods. There's no magical foods, but as we become aware of them, we can start to choose them. Where do you find that tryptophan? Things like tofu, things like beans, things like flaxseed. These things are loaded with this tryptophan. Beans happen to be a problematic food for Americans. You know, not too many Americans eat beans. If you travel like places like India, you will see people eat a lot of legumes there. Not here. You know? So sometimes we need to, re-educate and be aware how we can prepare these types of foods so that they're palatable and that they have the good appearance and they look good and so forth. Maybe in the near future you guys can run here a cooking class, isn't it? A little idea, okay? So in that way, you can participate of something like that and you can get like a hands-on, type of approach in which you can see how these foods can be prepared in an easy way. See, the issue is not to make things more complicated, but to make them more simpler and more applicable in the real life. That's the goal that we have for you. So that type of foods, are very good. And remember your omega-3s. We prefer the omega-3 of the vegetable source than from the animal source due to the fact that you can introduce toxins and things. And we saw, toxins already are a problem. Now you introduce even toxins, more toxins. That's why we try to prefer the vegetable source of the omega-3. So a cooking class, I think, that would, show very good foods that you can prepare and introduce.
What would be some of the omega-3s other than walnuts?
Good question. Any nuts happen to be rich, so not only the walnuts, almonds also, have their omega-3s. Also algae. Asian people love this algae. This is good stuff, actually. It's the second food highest in omega-3. The number one actually happens to be the flax seeds. In fact, the scientific term for the omega-3 is linoleic acid. And it had the word from linseed, which is the way that they call in England the flaxseed. And the other food that is very rich in omega-3s happen to be chia seeds. They're loaded also with the omega-3. If you're going to take it from the flaxseed, don't eat the whole seed, because as you eat it, it's going to come out. You're not a cow. A cow can break, things very much. We need to break the flaxseed, then take it. That's the way that is nice and rich.
Okay, one more question. If you're starting to have some memory issues, is there anything that you would recommend for that?
Good question. I have a whole dementia program that I'm developing. It's a 10-part program. But if you want to hear my dementia prevention program, Google the following words. Google Eddie Ramirez, dementia, and then the word audio verse. Audio verse as one word. Eddie Ramirez, dementia audio verse. That's going to take you to a page that you can download an MP3 free, and you can listen in your home. It's not just one thing, but it's many things that you need to make changes and so forth. So in that one audio lecture, I explain all those details.
You mentioned about the beans, right?
Yes.
But I know that the beans has a lot of lectin, which is now questionable.
That's right.
In these last time, and Dr. Gandhi, especially
That's right.
cardiologist from California, he wrote a book about the lectins, and he's actually saying that it's not good to eat beans.
Yeah, good question.
That's a lot of contradictory story on the internet that
That's right.
and people is a lot of confused with those things.
That's right. Well, let me answer you that one. So, lectins, something to worry? Absolutely not. That book actually doesn't have any evidence at all. He wrote this book to sell you some pills, anti-lectins, so he could make a lot of money. So there's some ethical issues there. So is there truth in that book? Absolutely not. Don't even read it. It just confuses your head.
Yeah, especially
If
he
it's,
mentioned about tomato. And
that's right, that's right. So none of the things that he says, when you go to the reference to see where he got the information, where's the journal where this information is? Crickets. There's no solid science behind that. So
are you recommend to use a lot of supplements if you don't eat good?
Exactly. See, it's because he's just trying to sell you a bunch of pills. As you saw, I'm not trying to sell you anything, isn't it? So again, there's some ethics issue there. You go to his website, all kinds of supplements and things. Oh, if you send me, your check and so forth, I'll send you all these supplements that are going to help you fight this, and so forth.
Can you damage your body if you use a lot of supplements and especially brain chemistry?
Can one?
Can you damage your brain?
Yes, it can have negative effects. For example, there was a very interesting study that came out recently showing how smokers that take supplements actually have higher rates of cancer than those that don't. So somehow those supplements are affecting the biochemistry of cancer and so forth. So again, people are trying to sell you all kinds of things. Oh, these berries that come from I don't know which island in the Pacific Ocean, and so forth. They're wonderful for the person selling them, and make good money, but you actually don't need it. What we need is real food, that's what we need. And another thing regarding legumes, it's interesting that the longest living people on planet Earth, one of the characteristics is their high legume intake. See, it contradicts that. If legumes are so horrible and bad, how come these people are living so many years if they are so horrible? Which, again, destroys the whole hypothesis and so forth.
And last one, is it possible to do blood work and to see your brain chemistry exactly to show you the problem with the brain and actually your brain chemistry, how it's working in your brain?
We do many blood tests when you come to our 10-day depression program. You cannot see the brain chemistry on a blood test. You would have to, get a spinal tap or something. But you can indirectly see what possible things may be affecting your mental health. As we mentioned in the hit number 9, for example, hormone problems. We want to check, make sure that hormones are under control. There's a marker called inflammation. When there's inflammation, the mental health doesn't work properly. So we want to make sure that inflammation is nice and low. There are things such as folate levels, there's iron, and there's multiple things that we get that information from your blood in order to understand what things maybe improve and so forth. We're not like completely against supplements, but we will use them if you need them. For example, if the blood test shows that your B12 is very low, we're going to go and supplement that B12. If we go ahead and take that blood test and we see some imbalance and so forth, we'll try to meet it, but we first need to have that security that there's a need there to improve it. Next question. Good.
You started to talk about a couple of this in maybe a few different ways or whatever, but since motivation is such a hurdle for people with
depression, yes.
With depression, whether you suffer yourself or if you know somebody who is, and you try to interact with that person, what have you. You mentioned, I mean, obviously it can be very draining on you, but they tend to close down a lot even more when you try to approach them. So how would you suggest getting over that initial motivation hurdle to even get started on any kind of...
Good. That's a very, very good question. So this is the thing. In a program, in an 8-week program, I told you, remember, you come once a week, then you go home and so forth. See, we talked about that motivation side of things, especially on the 4th week. Why did we take all the way till the 4th week to talk about that? Because see, the physical conditions affect your motivation. So see, we first want you to start doing some exercise. We first want you to start drinking some water. We first want you to start taking some omega-3. We still want you to start making some dietary changes. And see, by the time we get to the 4th week, we have prepared your brain to understand better this. See, the brain starts to clear and so forth. Many patients with depression are going to tell you, you know, I have this fogginess in my head. I cannot even think because of this foggy feeling that I have in my head. Well, as you start dealing with the causes of the depression, that fogginess starts to disappear, and your ability to concentrate and to make those better decisions start to get on board. So if somebody has, you know, that type of depression and so forth, start helping them with making those changes. As this person just shared a minute ago, we have these DVDs. You can get those DVDs, and you can show, you know, some of those programs to them so they can start to understand why they need to make this right type of changes and so forth. And then in that way, when we put good information, it's going to transform into good behaviors and so forth. So yes, I know some of them, you know, it's hard to motivate them and so forth. So don't start making too many changes at once. Little by little, you know, as you start making those changes, the neurochemistry starts to improve, and then the motivation and so forth will start to improve.
Thank you very much. Can you just tell us what are we expecting tomorrow?
Yes. So tomorrow we'll be starting at 11 in the morning, and we're going to be dealing with the topic, Heal Your Life by Healing Your Mind. So we'll be talking a little bit about that emotional intelligence and so forth. We'll have a nice healthy lunch here afterwards. You're welcome to come and eat with us and visit. And then in the afternoon at 2 p.m., we'll be dealing with food addictions, you know, so don't miss it. You know, this is very relevant subjects and so forth. Again, I'm not here every weekend, so take advantage of the fact that I am here. Bring your neighbors, and I hope to see you tomorrow.